Alright guys, I decided to read one more chapter to you today. So this is going to be chapter 13 of The White Giraffe by Lauren St. John. And I'm looking through it. It does seem a little bit long, so I might end up having to break it into 2 parts. We'll see. Either way, I hope that you enjoy. When they reached the Jeep, Tendai put the breakfast things in the cab and took out his rifle. They set off on foot across the valley. The sun was so searing that even the earth smelled baked and the sky was as blue as a kingfisher's wing. At this hour of the day there was no shade to speak of, for the lacy leaf thorn trees were alive with bees, cooing doves, and crested gray lories, which her grandmother and Tendai referred to as go-away birds, because that's what they seemed to shout at potential predators. These were the sounds Martine had come to associate with Africa. She stuck close to Tendai, who walked with his hand on the trigger of his rifle, alert for elephants, buffaloes, and lions, the most unpredictable animals in the reserve. He noticed everything. He showed Martine a nest of cuckoo bird babies, a comical chameleon, and the spoor of a female leopard and 2 cubs. He could even tell how big the cubs were and how fast the little family had been traveling. The more Tendai talked, the more obvious it was that he knew Sawabona like he knew his own heart. Martine felt safe with him. With his gravelly voice and patient way of explaining things, he reminded her of her father. All at once, Tendai broke off. He made a clicking noise of irritation and took some pliers out of his pocket. They were in the valley to search for snares, wire nooses, or iron-jawed traps left by poachers, which strangled animals or broke their limbs and left them to die slowly. Martine watched him as he sprang a trap, almost invisible in the long grass, and cut the rusty wire binding it to a tree. "I don't know what to do anymore," he said as they walked into the welcome cool of a grove of trees. "No matter how many snares I remove, they are always there the next day. And recently, we've started to lose our big game as well. The lion and the buffalo have disappeared in the last month. I wish we could employ a guard, but money is very tight." Listening to him, Martine began to feel frightened for Jeremiah. What if her giraffe, she'd already begun to think of Jimmy as hers, had his legs broken in a steel trap? Tendai, the Zulu put his finger on his lips. He indicated that she should creep forward quietly and crouch with him behind a tree. They sat motionless. After a few minutes, a magnificent kudu bull stepped gracefully into the clearing in front of them and stood in the dappled sunlight. He seemed to be listening for something. Martine thought that next to Jimmy, he was the most gorgeous animal she had ever seen. He had spiral horns and almond-shaped eyes and a broad fawn-colored face. And a broad fawn-colored face. Long, silky white fur traced the line of his throat, and delicate white stripes adorned his back, which was humped at the shoulder. "He's amazing," she whispered to Tendai, who grinned down at her. Bang! A bullet ripped into the tree trunk above Tendai's head, simultaneously spraying him with splinters and terrifying Martine. Before they could move, a second bullet hit the kudu in the throat. Blood spurted from his neck in a fountain, and he dropped to the ground and lay still. Martine screamed. Alex came strolling through the trees, smoke rising from the tip of his rifle. His blonde hair was standing up in sweaty spikes. "Sorry about that, guys," he said. "The sight on my gun's been playing up. Lucky I missed you. Hey, I was trying to hit that kudu over there. From where I was, it looked like it was caught in a snare." Tendai was enraged. There was nothing wrong with that kudu. Nothing, he shouted. "Where is the snare? What did you have to go and shoot it for?" "What can I say?" Alex mused chirpily. "These things happen. At least it'll make a good eating." This incensed Tendai even more, and the 2 men started to argue. Neither of them noticed Martine steal away and run as fast as she could to the fallen kudu. His eyes were glazed over, and his lovely fawn coat was scarlet with pulsing blood. The rifle blast had left a bit jagged hole in his white bearded throat. Martine bent down beside him. She was in a trance, just as she had been when she held the wild goose. Ordinarily, she would have been inconsolable at the mere idea of anyone shooting an animal, but today she didn't feel any sadness at all. Instead, she felt charged with energy, as if the purest, most perfect electricity in the world was coursing through her veins. Her hands became boiling hot. She put them over the kudu's heart, and there was a faint beat already fading. Martine thought fast. Shock and loss of blood had caused the kudu to lose consciousness, and she knew from the first aid her dad had taught her that without emergency treatment, he would be dead in minutes. But that didn't mean he couldn't be saved. The bullet had pierced the kudu's throat, passed straight through his windpipe, and made a clean exit. If Martine could stem the blood and heal his fainting heart, then maybe, just maybe, the kudu would breathe again. In the distance, she heard Alex snap sarcastically. "The trouble with you, Tendai, is you always put sentiment before business. A dead animal is not always a disaster, my friend. Sometimes it's just a furry bit of money." Oh my goodness, I can't deal with him right now. Whew! Martine shut him out and put her hand over the hole in the kudu's throat. Blood bubbled through the gaps in her fingers. Every second counted. She scanned the area around her, desperately searching for something that could help seal the wound. There was nothing but pale dirt, tufts of dry grass, and a big anthill. An anthill! Martine had a sudden flashback of Miss Volkner telling the class how the Shangan, I don't know, sorry guys, tribe had once used soldier termites, which had very large mandibles or pincers. I should know these words. I'm sorry. I need more practice reading, I suppose. To stitch up wounds. What made it so effective, Miss Volkner had told them, was that the termite saliva worked as a natural antiseptic. The downside, she added, was what Martine had thought was unnecessary relish, is that after the soldiers have locked their jaws, they have to rip their bodies off. That way they won't be tempted to let go. Ooh. Martine had been squeamish about the decapitation of the poor termites at the time, and as she watched them making their way innocently home past her left knee, she didn't feel any better about it now. But she also knew she had to save the kudu. The soldier termites were easy to spot. They had bulbous red heads on tiny cream bodies, and their black mandibles, I think that's how you say it, waved in the air like weapons. As quick as a flash, she brought the edges of the wound together in a neat line, grabbing a passing soldier by the non-biting end, and held its pincers to the pink flesh. It clamped down hard. Before she could think about it, Martine whipped off its rear. It worked. The soldier's black mandibles curved into the kudu's skin exactly like a stitch. She picked up another termite and did the same thing again, telling herself that at least it had died for a good cause. It hadn't just been stepped on by mistake or something. In under a minute, 20 termites had sealed the wound as tightly as any surgeon could have done. Not a trickle of blood escaped. Martine placed her hot hands over the kudu's dying heart and began pressing down every few seconds. Under her touch, the beat grew stronger and the kudu's skin became warm. When he opened his eyes and saw Martine, he appeared confused, but not frightened. He climbed to his feet shakily and, with a flick of his tail, bounded weakly away. She watched him go, flooded with an indescribable feeling of joy. All she could think was, Dad would have been so proud of me. That's when she realized that somehow, without noticing it, she was finding her feet in her new world, and because of that, happiness was creeping up on her again. 3 times in the last few weeks, saving the Egyptian goose, finding Jemmy, and now healing the kudu. She'd had to do things on her own, with nobody else's help. Even when she was very, very scared, and each time something amazing had happened. And that made her trust herself more. Even so, she was scared to look at the 2 men in case they'd witnessed what had just taken place. Fortunately, it seemed they hadn't. Alex had his back to her, and Tendai's view was blocked by the game warden's body. They were still arguing. She used a tuft of grass and spit on and some spit to wipe the blood off her hands as she walked over to them. "Kudu's gone," she announced casually. The men stopped ranting and stared at the spot where the kudu had been. Tendai rubbed his eyes. He went a funny gray color. His gaze went from Martine to the clearing, then back again. "Where's the kudu?" roared Alex. "Where's the kudu? It was dead. How could it have moved?" "He felt better," said Martine. "He decided that it wasn't a great idea to hang around while the sight on your gun isn't working." Well, that's funny. Alex made a move toward her as if he were going to throttle her with his bare hands. "You again," he snarled. "Remember what I told you? Be very, very careful. Next time you might not be so lucky." He turned to Tendai. "And as for you, just for the record, you should know that it's not the new South Africa on this game reserve." He picked up his gun and stormed off into the trees. Martine waited until she heard his truck speeding away. "He could have killed you," she said. The Zulu was sitting on the ground with his head in his hands. There were 2 ugly gashes on his face, caused by the ricocheting splinters. He lifted his head. "Please don't say anything to your grandmother." He didn't want to distress her unnecessarily. "Tendai, please." "Okay," Martine agreed unhappily. They were silent for a minute. Then Tendai said, "My aunt was right, wasn't she, little one? You have the gift." Martine didn't answer. "The kudu," persisted Tendai. "It was dying. What did you do to it?" "He was resting," said Martine. "The kudu was just resting." And with that, Tendai had to be satisfied. Whew, that was a good one. That was intense. My goodness. All right. So, chapter 14 is next. I'll have to read that to you guys in a few days. Because I think my phone's dying. So here is a sneak peek at that. I think it's just a tree on a hill. I'm not really sure. We're just going to have to wait until next time to figure out what that's all about. So anyway, I hope that you guys enjoyed that chapter. I know I certainly did. This book is getting really good. I haven't actually read the past few chapters until reading it with you guys, and whew, that's good. It's intense, and I like intense books. So there we go. All right, one last view. There's that beautiful lake with all the water, and I meant rain. You know what I mean. There's a lot of girls sleeping. She's passed out. She's not gonna let me wake her up this time. All right, bye you guys. Have a great day. I look forward to reading with you next time. All right, see ya.